Let this history man tell you a bit of a word burger. A few months ago, I was sitting at home with nothing to do. At this point, I've seen the trailers for Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, and thought it looked quite good. Only one issue. Not only have I never seen Fury Road, I've never seen any Mad Max. So this particular night, with nothing to do, I decided to watch Mad Max Fury Road, and I was completely enamored with the world that was on display. The movie was good, but to me, the best part was the world that it took place in. The resource shortage, the terminology for everything, the aesthetics for the cars and everything else that was on show. I absolutely loved it. And then a week or so later, I found myself in the same situation. Absolutely nothing to do. So I decided to continue my Mad Max journey and start from the beginning and watch the original 1979 film starring Mel Gibson. And then I watched Road Warrior. And then I watched Beyond Thunderdome, all in the same day. I watched all three original Mad Max movies in one day because once again, I absolutely fell in love with the world that was on display. The movies were pretty meh, but everything else was just divine. Then finally, Furiosa hits theaters, and of course, I gotta go see it. And you already know I completely adored the world that was on display. It also helped that, in my opinion, Furiosa is the best of all the Mad Max movies. Now, I have become completely obsessed with everything Mad Max and will jump into any media that involves the franchise. So, the next step I decided to take was to play the Mad Max game from 2015. Being the video game enthusiast I am, I have been well aware of this game for a while. I often hear about it in the context of severely underrated games and how it is much better than the not-so-great sales would imply, partially because it was released on the same day as Metal Gear Solid 5, and we all know who's going to win that fight. All these years later, the game has gained a cult following and according to many, doesn't get the love and attention it deserves. Eager to get back into the world of Mad Max and to get to the bottom of just how good this game is, I jumped into it head first, and you already know I got some thoughts. So let's fill up our gas tanks and climb into our war machine and discuss the Mad Max game. Mad Max was developed by Avalanche Studios, best known for the Just Cause games, and published by Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment, now known as Warner Bros. Games, best known for being big ol' fucking idiots as of late. It was released on September 1st, 2015, and was released on PS4, Xbox One, Windows PC, Linux PC, and Mac. I played the PC version, purchased through Steam, so all footage you are seeing is PC footage, which was played on a machine with 32 gigs of RAM, a 6750 XT GPU, and a Ryzen 9 5900X CPU. And all footage was recorded using OBS Studio. I also played a good chunk of this on my Lenovo Legion Go, and with it being a nearly 10-year-old game, I didn't have any issues on my Legion Go that I didn't have on my main PC. More on that later. In the Mad Max game, you play as the titular Max Rokitansky in post-apocalyptic Australia, just like in the movies. The game starts off in an oh-so-familiar fashion, Max blasting down the road in his famous Interceptor. He quickly gets chased down by Scabrous Scrotus, one of the Immortan Joe's sons and current ruler of Gastown, and his warboys. They eventually overpower Max and steal his car, among other possessions, and leave him to die in the desert. However, anyone who has seen the movies or read the comics know that Max is a tough man to kill, and Scrotus did not succeed in that goal. As Max regains his consciousness and starts to move around again, he comes across a Blackfinger, aka a mechanic, called Chumbucket. Chumbucket, believing Max to be a warrior sent from the heavens, bestows Max with a car Chum has deemed the magnum opus. It is with this car that Max and Chum seek V8 to put into it, as well as exact revenge on Scabrous Scrotus. I'm going to get it out of the way early that this game is not as good as I was led to believe. By no means is it a bad game, but is it a great underrated masterpiece? Far from. But let's get into it. First and foremost, I think the sound design of this game is immaculate. Even though the magnum opus starts with a V6, it still sounds absolutely nasty. Getting into the car and firing it up and hearing it roar made me ready to slam my foot down and wreak havoc on some war boys. And that goes for every vehicle in the game, as the magnum opus is not the only car you can drive. Much like other open world games, you can drive just about every car you come across, and even while fighting the other ones, the engine sounds they all make are just great. And it is not just the engines that sound awesome. Max is equipped with a shotgun, as well as whose blast sounds like nothing else out there. The metal mashing and the explosions of all the cars and other things are all very impactful sounds as well. The explosions especially are very hefty and carry a lot of weight. Some are even, at times, quite over the top, but I would say Mad Max as a franchise could be summed up as over the top, so I have no issues with that. But one set of sound design that stuck in my head more than anything is the sounds of the melee combat. Every punch and kick you land just comes with such a meat-mangling and bone-crushing noises, and I love it. Especially while in Fury mode, a state of rage Max can enter to deal increased damage. The sounds of pain are amplified even more, and are in a very twisted and dark way now that I think about it. It's almost music to my ears. Maybe I need therapy. Looping back to the Magnum Opus, I really like how customizable it is, both in terms of form and function. Early in the game, you get to choose from a selection of car bodies and dictate the starting shape of the Magnum Opus. As a huge fan of the Pursuit Special, aka Max's Interceptor, aka the Black on Black, I originally decided to start with the car body that most resembled that. But what is cool is you can find the other bodies out in the Wasteland to collect, and then choose from and switch out to them at any point in time. I eventually collected and switched to a car body known as Dirola. Yes, there is no R in the end of that, Dirola. A body that was inspired by classic Rolls Royces, and something about taking a Rolls Royce, a car that is the epitome of class and elegance, then turning it into an apocalypse survival machine that is bold, loud, and heavy metal looking is very appealing to me. I always love it when things are used for purposes they were never intended for, so I feel a Rolls Royce that looks like it got thrown into a punk rock car designer fits that bill. But it is not just cosmetics that are customizable on the Magnum Opus. In fact, I would argue that takes a back seat to the upgrades that impact the car's survivability. You can upgrade the engine for faster acceleration, the exhaust for a faster top speed, a battering ram to the front of the car to deal more collision damage, among many other upgrades. But what makes things really interesting are the drawbacks that come with some upgrades. That battering ram I mentioned adds weight to the car, so of course you're not going to be able to accelerate as fast or handle as well. Same with body armor, and so on and so forth. It is the part of car upgrading that I find cool because different players can build their own Magnum Opus to fit their playstyle. Maybe all you care about is the speed and acceleration, so you build a car that can do that, but once you take a couple hits, you gotta give Chum the chance to repair it. Me being the simple-minded doofus I am, I just equipped the top upgrade for everything and figured it would work out, which it did. I'm not gonna say it here and say that it didn't, but there's definitely more strategies to it than that. All the upgrades and the story relevance make the Magnum Opus the most important car in the game, but it is not the only one. As mentioned earlier, you can drive almost any vehicle you come across. However, I do not fully see the point of driving the other vehicles, especially when it comes to the collection of them. You can turn the Magnum Opus into a rolling fortress, and it becomes your crutch for survival through its upgrades. But if you pull into a stronghold or garage, you can swap out the Magnum Opus with any other car you return to a stronghold or garage beforehand, and take it out for a spin. But I do not know why you would want to do that. The Magnum Opus is the only car in the game that can be upgraded in any way. The cars that you collect that are not the Magnum Opus cannot be upgraded in any way, nor does Chum Bucket come with you in any other car other than the Opus. What you see is what you get, and it is because of this that I don't really see a purpose to being able to call upon these vehicles. They're typically quite weak, and since Chum isn't with you, often under-equipped in terms of weaponry. The only other vehicle that offers any purpose is Chum Bucket's buggy, as the Dinky D sits in the back and helps you sniff out and defuse mines in the minefields. The only time I didn't drive the Magnum Opus or Chum's buggy was when I tested out to see if I could drive other cars and blast around for a minute and two in the Black on Black when I got it. I feel like the car collection thing is just a pretty pointless aspect of the game. Driving a new car would offer up a bit of variation in this game, which quite frankly would be very welcomed. Mad Max is a very repetitive game. First and foremost, if you do not like Ubisoft's blueprint of climb tower, reveal the area and things to do, then go do those things, this is not the game for you. Although this game is not made by Ubisoft, it follows that exact structure pretty much to the T. Those activities that you reveal are also quite repetitive. Every area, more or less, has the exact same group of activities to do. Eliminate snipers, tear down scarecrows, take over camps, etc., etc. You do this in one area, then you do it all over again in the next. And there are quite a bit of areas, so it got real repetitive pretty quickly. But with some upgrades being tied to how much of these activities you do, depending on how you want the magnum opus to be, you might feel an obligation to do them, like me, and not skip right over all of it. Also, the looting in the game is very repetitive as well. Scrap acts as the currency in this game, and there are several ways to acquire it, but the one you will likely do most often is straight up looting areas. Old-fashioned walking around and picking things up, and that got real old real quick, especially since for whatever reason in this game, Avalanche decided to, instead of just hit buttons, you gotta hold it for literally every single thing pretty much, and I just don't get the logic behind that. But since it's the currency, you once again it may feel an obligation to do so. Scrap is not the only thing you can loot and collect at locations though. One other item you can collect are history relics. These are typically pictures or writings from either before the fall of society or not long after. Pulling out the pictures was always cool because it reminds you that really the fall of society did not happen that long ago. The original film takes place in the early 80s, and there is still some semblance of society and order in that film. When you come across old photos and stuff in the real world, you are used to it being far older than the 80s, so seeing so many semi-modern photos and them being referred to as these relics from a long ago is a little surreal and pretty cool. And there are the writings, often hastily scribbled notes about someone's final actions or thoughts before they either flee town, delve into madness, or pass away. These are always nice as well because they are often short but still open your eyes to what a horrible situation some were put in. Through various notes, you learn the military tried to control the nation at one point, and it is because of this, one note in particular really stuck out to me. The note is as follows, quote, "Molly, I know you can't read. I know you will never understand. The soldiers came to pick us up. It all went so fast. No pets, they said. Damn it all to hell. I opened the treat cupboard. I know it's not good for you, but eat away, my friend. Just eat away. Thank you for your loyalty. From Sasso." End quote. This note is a harsh reminder that under all the absurd and wildness of the Mad Max world, people underwent incredible tragedies and heartbreaking moments. This is the apocalypse, and it impacts people in all sorts of ways. This may have been the most impactful note to me, but there are plenty more in the game that are very emotional as well, and it was nice to read and experience these and pick up some crumbs of other people's stories, and it was a cool addition to the game. And it appears this game is sort of becoming a history relic itself, as this is a nearly 10-year-old game, yet I still encountered a couple bugs that are clearly unresolved. Nothing game-breaking by any means, but they were also noticeable enough for me to bring them up. The lesser of the two was just for one play session, there is no music at all, so very much not an issue. But the second bug was a little bit more of a hindrance. The second bug would cause some important information to not come up on the screen, such as how many objectives I had left, or how much scrap I collected from a box. Again, nothing that I couldn't work around, but definitely made life a little harder than it should be, especially since, unlike the music one, this one happened more frequently and definitely more than once or twice. I would have hoped that after all these years, the game would be in pretty bulletproof shape. And speaking of bullets, the last thing about this game I want to touch on isn't a positive or negative, more so an observation, and I am just tossing it in here towards the end because I didn't really know where else to put it. I find it an interesting choice that they decided to go with a primarily melee combat system for this game, given the prevalence of firearms in the Mad Max world. For crying out loud, there's a place called the Bullet Farm in the newer movies whose sole purpose is to, hey, you guessed it, make bullets and firearms. Even part of Max's signature character is carrying a sawed-off double-barrel shotgun. Firearms are still definitely present in this experience. You still get to use a shotgun, granted not the iconic double-barrel, and a sniper rifle throughout the game. But the sniper rifle can only be used when you are in the magnum opus, and ammo for both weapons is quite scarce. So you end up killing 99.9% of enemies using only your fist or melee weapons. Again, by no means a negative, especially with that sound design I mentioned earlier, just an observation and an interesting creative decision I thought. For a long time, Based on my understanding, this game was not considered canon. In the Mad Max comics, there are 2 people Max comes in contact with that are also in the game. However, Max's interactions and history with these 2 characters varies between the games and the comics. And historically, People Eater is typically the one in charge of Gastown, as detailed in the comics, not Scrotus. Not to mention that, based on my understanding, George Miller, the creator of Mad Max, was a lot more involved in the creation of the comics than he was this game. I did a little reading, and it turns out the game had a tumultuous development cycle, and they seem to have taken some creative liberties. However, with the characters like Dr. Dementus, Chumbucket, and Scabrous Scrotus appearing in the Furiosa film, some people believe the game is canon now, despite the differences between the game and other forms of Mad Max media. But if you ask me, it's all canon. A key point of Mad Max as a character is the fact that he's more myth than man. It's obvious he exists to some capacity, but to most, he's nothing more than a legend. Mad Max could be one person, he could be several people, or he could be completely fictitious and not exist at all. The fact that the films Road Warrior and Beyond the Thunderdome, not to mention all the comics, are told by narrators solidify this, that Mad Max exists in a series of stories, not necessarily actual happenings. So for Max's story and some surrounding elements to seem a little spotty and unbelievable and have conflicting aspects to other versions is the most canon thing that could happen to the character and his journeys, in my opinion. But is the Mad Max game good? Yes. However, as I stated, it is not a diamond in the rough or whatever by any means. I would say it is a solid 6 out of 10 at best. And that is coming from someone that, if you couldn't tell, absolutely loves this franchise and has consumed every piece of media that takes place in this world that I can. I would say this game is worth taking a look at if you just want a nice, simple, arcadey game to play, especially with it only being $20 on Steam. But never would I suggest this is some cult classic that needs more recognition. It was fine and nothing more, but much like the films and the comics, it only furthered my love for this wild world George Miller created. It may be a while before we see another Mad Max film, and probably even longer before we see another Mad Max game, if we see either of those 2 at all, but rest assured, despite its mediocrity, the game only makes me more excited for what might come. And the moment a new Mad Max project comes out, no matter the medium, I will be there, day one, ready to fill my car up with gasoline, fire up the V8, and hit the road on another adventure.
The red tank! The leader is exposed! Oh, the magical mojo! Dominate!
I truly love this world so much. In terms of gaming, Half-Life, Marathon, and Fallout are my favorite worlds, but in terms of media as a whole, Mad Max truly trumps them all. I actually plan to get a tattoo of the black on black because I love it so much. But enough of me gushing about Mad Max, and let me gush about you, viewer. Thank you for taking the time and attention to watch this video. Greatly appreciate it, and a good way to tell YouTube that you appreciated the video is to hit that thumbs up button and leave a like on it. Next, I will be taking on the Dishonored series. I have not played either of them and plan to play both. Well, I might as well start with the first one. And just like with the Gears of Wars and any other series I may have tackled on this channel, I'll put a non-Dishonored game in between the 2 as a buffer for video-wise. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that video when it comes out or any other video I put out on food or anything else. Lastly, let's talk about Mad Max in the comments. I hope I betrayed my passion and love for this franchise in this video, and if I did, then you already know I would love to keep talking about Mad Max in the comments. Whether you want to talk about the game, the films, or the comics, I've experienced them all. So let's talk about them down below. Once again, thank you for your time and attention, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. See you then.